Hi, this is Katrina. Welcome to my studio and to my channel. Today I'm going to swatch out again all of my Roman Szmal Aquarius paints, and I thought you might like to join me. I'll just slowly go through them all. I've written them all up. I'm swatching them in the back of my Winsor & Newton visual diary. So it's 100% cotton, 300 GSM. And I apparently have 43 colours. So this will take a little while, and hopefully I won't get too mixed up as I go, because they are sort of in different pans, different palettes, so we'll see how we go. So the first colour I have is Deep Green Gold, PY129. Actually, I'm going to move where my paints are, so you don't need to see my arm move across the screen every time. Hopefully, yep, looks okay. So what I usually try and do as I swatch out is have a fairly heavy mass tone towards the top and dilute it down to the bottom of the swatch box. So the first one was Deep Green Gold, pigment code PY129. It's according to Roman Szmal, medium staining, non-granulating and opaque. So the next colour is Aqueous Yellow. Aquarius Yellow, I should say. Excuse me, I am Australian, so some of my pronunciations could be a little bit interesting to you, especially if you are European or Polish or know how I'm supposed to say some of these words, so my apologies for mangling it all up. So next is Benzimidazole Yellow. So this is PY154, and it's a staining, non-granulating, according to, and transparent yellow. Then we have Hansa Yellow Medium, and this is PY74, and it's medium staining, non-granulating, and I guess it's semi-transparent. And then we have Hansa Yellow Deep. Oops. And then we have, so Hansa Yellow Deep is a PY65 staining, non-granulating, transparent colour. And then Permanent Orange, just try and read the labels on my little pans. And this is a PO59 staining, non-granulating, transparent. And then we have transparent pyrrole orange. It's a lovely rich orange, this one. PO71. And it's medium staining or moderately staining, non-granulating and transparent. And this is one of the colours I have in my small palette. Because I have so many colours, I've divided them up. Took a while to decide which ones I wanted in my small palette, and I still paint with mixtures of the big and the small palette, so it doesn't really matter. Then we have Pyrrole Scarlet. Pyrrole Scarlet is PR255, highly staining, non-granulating and semi-transparent. Again, beautiful, rich, incredibly rich colour. Then we have Pyrrole Rubine, and this is PR264, and this is staining, non-granulating and semi-transparent. And then the last one on this line is Anthraquinone Red. A really, really, really beautiful colour. I really love this colour, even though it is not necessarily light fast. So this is a PR177. I've seen the slightest bit of fading in my own light fastness tests on this one, but I really can only see it because I'm looking for it. It's quite not too bad at this stage, but we'll see how it goes over time. But otherwise, I think it's an absolutely beautiful, beautiful colour. And then we have Quin Pink. So this is a PV19, and this is a staining colour, non-granulating and transparent. Now this does fade a little bit as it dries. There is a bit of a drying shift in this colour. I think it's quite lovely, and I actually think this is quite a good mixing colour too. And then magenta. So magenta is PR122. Oh, a little bit more on my brush. PR122. It's a staining colour, non-granulating and transparent. This is a really beautiful colour. I think it's in my small palette. Okay, then we have ultramarine violet. So this one's a fairly new colour to me. I don't have much experience with this pigment at all. I think it is quite lovely. So this is a PV15, medium staining, granulating and semi-transparent. I have been really enjoying this colour in landscapes. I'm finding it creates some really beautiful shadow colours, and it's a good colour to neutralise, to use for neutralisation. And then we have dioxazine violet. Make sure I'm choosing the right one. So this is a very, very, very rich violet, quite powerful, quite intense. So this is a PV37. Staining, moderately granulating, transparent, and as you can see, really quite deep. And then we have mineral violet. So this is the first of the mixed pigment colours. So mineral violet is a PB29 and a PV19. So it's a moderately staining, granulating, and they've called it a transparent. Probably won't really see much of the pigment separation in a swatch this small. You'd have to swatch it out bigger to see the effect. And next is Indanthrene blue. Indanthrene blue. I really love this colour, the PB60. One of my favourite blues. Such a rich colour. Just really gorgeous. So a high staining, non-granulating, transparent colour, and wonderfully light fast too. And then French ultramarine. So classic, always love this colour. So a PB29, and it's classified as staining, granulating and semi-transparent. And I think this is quite a lovely version. Then we have cobalt blue. Now cobalt blue is not a colour that I tend to use a lot. I've always tended to use ultramarines and ceruleans. So this poor cobalt still doesn't get a lot of love in my palette. I probably should use a little bit more. It is a beautiful colour. So it's a PB28, moderately staining, granulating and semi-opaque. And then with Roman Szmal, I actually have the cobalt cerulean blue rather than the classic cerulean PB35. So this cobalt cerulean is a PB36, and I do like this blue. It's quite beautiful, moderately staining, beautifully granulating, and semi-opaque. As you can see, dilutes out beautifully. And then I have the phthalo blue green shade, which is a PB15:3. So this is obviously a high staining, non-granulating, transparent colour. Quite a lot of punch to this one. I haven't actually tried the red shade yet. I've decided it's going to go on a short list of pigments to try out next time I'm ordering paints. I do love trying pigments, exploring what they can do, seeing how they vary. So very intense colour there. Let me just wash my brush out a bit. Now let me move this a little bit. Hang on. I'm just going to rearrange a few things. Okay, so now we have a colour called Ocean Blue, which is another of their sort of mixed pigment colours. So this one was a PBR24 PB15:3, and so this is a, just make sure I do have the right colour. Yes. So it's a PB15:3, so a phthalo blue with a brown pigment in it. So again, highly staining colour, non-granulating, and semi-transparent. So this is most definitely a very high staining colour as well. A very, very pretty colour, but I'll admit I don't use it very much. So cobalt sea blue. So this is a PB28. And this is classified as medium staining, granulating, and semi-opaque. As you can see, beautiful granulation in that. It's quite an interesting mix when you mix that one with the Potter's Pink, creates a really textured and interesting colour. Again, a useful landscape colour. Now the next colour I have is phthalo green blue shade. Again, this is a very intense colour, so this is your PG7, and it's a high staining, non-granulating, transparent, almost, well, really a very unnatural colour, but again great for mixing further greens and giving deeper values, and makes beautiful greys when neutralised with the reds. So in a way I find this it's a very useful mixing colour. I don't use it on its own, as a colour on its own. It doesn't have much practicality in that regard. And next we have Aquarius Green. So this is another of their mixed pigments. So this one is a PY150, PBR25 and PB29. So this one is your, again, this swatch will be a bit too small to really see what this colour can do with regards to separation. But this colour though is really quite, it's got that beautiful darkness to it and can create excellent value range in landscapes. So I do find myself using this one as a convenience green in landscapes a little bit. Right, and then on to Quin Gold. So this one is their original Quin Gold. I believe they now have a new Quin Gold hue. So this version of Quin Gold that I have from them is the PY150 P048 Quin Gold. And this is, it's quite a beautiful colour. It dilutes out to this really intense golden colour. So starts off a little bit more deeper. So it's a staining, non-granulating, transparent colour. And then the next one, this is a colour that found its way onto my shortlist palette too. This is Transparent Gold Ochre. Now I've always loved having yellow ochre on my palette. Again, I find it a very useful colour in landscapes, particularly Australian landscapes. Often because the greens I can mix with a yellow ochre are very, very muted, and I think more useful in painting our eucalyptus and some of the other trees that we have. And also having, you know, often very dried off grasses. Now this Transparent Gold Ochre is just such a beautiful colour and is a little bit more transparent. So it's still a PY43 earth pigment, moderately staining and non-granulating, and they classify it as transparent. It's probably transparent by yellow ochre standards, and it is more transparent than their yellow ochre. But as I say, I think it's an absolutely gorgeous colour. Now this is their yellow ochre, so this is the PY43, so I had this one first. And again, I'm very happy with this colour, but as you can see next to the Transparent Gold Ochre, it's just that little bit darker, and it is just a little bit more opaque, even though it's classified as a transparent colour. I would call a yellow ochre at least semi-transparent. And so you can see that there's a little bit more, I guess, red in that colour. Now, next on the list, now this is an interesting colour and I do like it. I tried this colour because of a recommendation by Jane Blundell. It's the Geotite. So this is, again, it's a yellow, in the yellow ochre family, but this is it's classified as moderately staining and granulating. And we can see it's, again, darker again, but it will granulate out. And so this does add beautiful texture again if I do want to paint with that granulating texture. This is an excellent choice. Now, Italian Raw Sienna, which is a PBR7. So moderately staining, moderately granulating and transparent. So we can see similar sort of colour range. Although I've always preferred the yellow ochres, I can see why people, and I still do use this one. It's not that I don't use a raw sienna. That's part of getting some other pigments, was to try them out. You know, do I end up using them? Right, I've just got to check where this one is. This is Terra Pazzuli. I'm going to say this incorrectly. Terra Pazzulo. I know I've said that incorrectly. Anyway, it's a PBR 102. Now Roman Szmal have quite a few versions of PBR 102, their earth colours. And I do like earth colours. I think that they are beautiful. So this one is classified as moderately staining, moderate granulation, and semi-transparent. And look at this gorgeous colour. It's just so pretty. Stunning. Hi, we're back. Had a little bit of an interruption with the swatching out, and combination of the camera turned itself off and things were out of screen, so we have sort of like the last 3 rows to re-swatch. So we were up to Mummy Transparent Red. So this is a pigment code PR102, another earth code, classified as non-staining, moderately granulating, and semi-opaque or semi-transparent. Now this is another pigment that's actually on my my Szmal palette. So this is the sort of a short list of my favourites, or the ones I'm painting with more often. It's hard to call things favourites because I pull them out. I love all my pigments and I use them, I mix them up quite frequently. Right, next one is Hematite. Just got to make sure I've got the right one here. So this one is a PR102, another earth pigment. Now this one is probably the most opaque of the pigments that I have. So as you can see, this goes down so heavily. Quite an intense colour. So it's considered a staining, granulating, opaque colour. But as you can see, you can dilute it out to quite a beautiful earthy red. And then we have Italian Burnt Sienna. So that's the one I have on my Szmal palette. And this is just a lovely classic burnt sienna. So a PBR7, another earth pigment, moderately staining, granulating, and semi-opaque. And one of those colours that just mixes up beautiful, beautiful greys with the classic ultramarine blue and burnt sienna for a grey. I do love mixing up my various earth pigment reds with the different blues just to see what what greys they come up with. It's actually a really relaxing, almost meditation to do. And then transparent brown oxide. This I guess is my darker value brown that I use more frequently. So again, a PR 101, staining, granulating, and consider transparent. As you can see, beautiful. I do tend to use my warmer earth tones. I do like the sort of redder leaning earth tones, just a personal preference. And then I'm really quite impressed with this. This is the Roman Szmal's version of Potter's Pink. I do have the Daniel Smith Potter's Pink, but because I leave my my paints to dry most of the time, I do find that the Daniel Smith Potter's Pink dries very, very, very hard. And this Roman Szmal's version is really easy to reactivate. Again, just a personal preference. There's nothing like the Daniel Smith's is a beautiful colour though. So Potter's Pink PR 233, moderately staining, granulating, and semi-opaque. Now the next one, this is a new colour to me. I haven't had this colour very long. This is Perylene Violet. Make sure I'm in frame. So this is a PV29, a staining, non-granulating, transparent. Now this is a beautiful colour. I know a lot of people use it. I'm just not familiar with using it yet, so I'm working on trying to introduce this colour into more of my works. So, as any of us do as we discover new pigments and how they work best with the work we do. Again, beautiful colour. So then we have Caput Mortem. Another of the beautiful earth reds. Roman Szmal's does an excellent range of earth pigments. So this is a PR 102. Another earth pigment, moderately staining, granulating, and they call it semi-transparent. Now this one it dilutes out to such a beautiful tone. You'll see that lovely granulation coming out. And it dilutes down to almost a beautiful pink. It's just absolutely beautiful colour. I do love this one. Adds beautiful textures to landscapes, shadows. Then we have a Cypress Raw Umber Deep. So this is a fairly classic raw umber. So a PBR7, moderately staining, granulating, and semi-transparent. I don't actually use raw umber very much. Again, a pigment that, even though I've had it in my palette since the start, for some reason I just don't reach for it. So some of you might find that shocking, but for some reason it's just not a go-to pigment for me. Okay, the next one is Perylene Green. Now again, this is a fairly new to me pigment, but oh my gosh, I fell in love with this almost instantly. So this is actually Perylene Green, is a PBK 31, moderately staining, non-granulating, semi-transparent, and I just love this colour. It's just beautiful. I find it so useful again in landscapes. It creates shadows and foliage so beautifully, and I love its muted nature. It mixes wonderfully too. So the next one is the Shadow Violet. So rather than having a neutral tint in my collection, I found that I tend to use these Shadow Violets. This colour is probably the closest thing I have to a neutral tint, or it's not exactly, it's maybe I use it where others might use a Payne's Grey. So this particular grey is a PG50, so it's got a green element, a PB29, so an ultramarine blue, and a PV19, so that gives it its violet shade. It separates really beautifully, but a really beautiful shadow colour that I use in a lot of landscapes. It's a colour I go to when I want a deeper value. Now the next one I am not going to attempt to pronounce. I've forgotten I put it away. This is very, I think this grey is very similar to the Shadow Violet. So this is spelt PRZY BYSZ. So unfortunately I just have no idea how I'd go about pronouncing that. Again, a very deep value grey, because I believe it's the same pigments that are in Daniel Smith's Moonglow, and again this is a beautiful colour. So PB29, our ultramarine, PR177, so that's the same as the anthraquinone red, and a PG20. Is it? PG26. So moderately staining, granulating, semi-transparent. Unfortunately, with such a small swatch, you really won't see the separation of those colours particularly well. It is holding up quite well in my light fastness tests. The PR177 is, according to Kimberly Crick, she's had some light fastness issues with it. If I look particularly closely at my light fastness studies, I can see the tiniest little bit of change, but it really is an insignificant amount at this stage. So far so good. The next one is an Aquarius Black. Now I don't use much black paint with watercolour, so this one I got because of its unique granulating properties. Normally if I want a deeper value, I'll mix my own grey or use one of these, the Shadow Violet, or one of my other deeper valued colours depending on its situation. But this Aquarius Black is a PBK11, another earth tone. But as you can see, this is moderately staining, but it's really granulating. And because it doesn't have much, so the pigment in this particular paint is just, it mostly settles out. It's very granulating. It creates interesting texture rather than adding black. It's a very interesting colour to add. And then the last one is a Buff Titanium, and this is a PW6:1, another earth pigment. Again, not a pigment that I use very often. I think it's useful to have. I've used it for painting like sand, beach scenes, particularly in Australia where we have very almost white to golden sands, so this can be a useful colour for that, and again for landscapes. Right, so that's all 43 pigments swatched out. I really enjoy this brand of paint. I'm quite comfortable and happy working from full pans. I do a lot of journal work and smaller scale, so working from full pans I can easily use some fairly decent sized brushes. I love their range of single pigment paints. It just provides me with the flexibility with mixing. And their price point, it's astonishing for me to be able to get the range of colours that I have. So this is, let's see, so that's all of them swatched out. So that's the original swatches for those last couple that we just did. As you can see, there is a little bit of a drying shift with some of them. But the granulation you can certainly see on things like the Potter's Pink, the Caput Mortem, and even when we come back up to the French Ultramarine. Beautiful granulation, not large granulation, but you can see that lovely texture. But generally they dry down really beautifully. Very, very happy with this brand. So I'd love to know what your thoughts are. Do you have a favourite? Have you tried this brand? I hope you found this helpful or enjoyable. So thanks very much for joining me, and hope we might see you on another occasion. Bye.